How's it going, everybody? I'm Drifty from Driftwood Gaming. Welcome back to Let's Make a Game 2018 version. We are doing Natural Explorers. This is a sim RPG using the RPG Maker MB engine. Thank you for all the comments in the last episode. I'm going to scroll through them and you can take a look at them. I'll mention a few of the new ones. Christian Micah made a suggestion saying that we add a village raid mechanic for a quick boost of gold. Petya011 suggested that we change the gathering sound effects for food to animal sounds and add wool and leather as harvestable resources. I've done that inside the farm timer here. Very simple to do that, just using the Rarity Check variable we already used. Bridgix suggests we add a social or political aspect, which is not a terrible idea. And I'm going to scroll up to give you guys a chance to look at what has been added, and you can pause the video to see some of the suggestions that people have made. Okay, let's jump in the project. Like I said, I've added the wool and leather to the farm, and the common event works the same way, except now it checks after the timer runs another variable, the Rarity Check. It runs a conditional checking that variable to see if it is over 80. If it is over 80, we're going to add a wool item. We're going to show the correct icon pop up and the correct gab text pop up as well. If it doesn't roll over 80, it has an else handler that checks to see if it rolls over 60. If so, it's going to add leather, change the icon and gab text. Otherwise, if it rolls 59 or below, it'll just award meat. This is going to cause another issue with not having enough food. If RNG is not nice to us, how are we going to not starve to death? So I've added a new thing. Somebody else suggested that we add a dock and a fishing system. It's not much of a system really, it's just going to be integrated the same way as the other timers are used. So this is going to provide us with fish, which calls the same common event once we use it. So it's the same thing going on. It runs a parallel process, the fish timer, which I need to add to the initialization as well. Okay, I already did that. So when the player buys the fish farm, which is over here, it will turn on the switch that toggles the parallel process to happen. So the parallel will turn on once you own the fish dock, and it will run a variable, control variable every frame of the game. So in 3 minutes, it will play an animation, add fish, show an icon of the fish on this area, do the gab sound effects, do the gab window, and reset the variable. So that's going to call, when the player uses that item, it's going to call consume food, just like the other food, which I've renamed food to meat and added fish, so they do the same thing. That makes it so if the player is having bad RNG or good RNG on the farm getting leather and wool for armors and upgrades, they don't starve to death because they can still have a fish farm creating food for them. So those are just a few changes I've made off camera. I added a graveyard back here. Don't know what I'm going to use it for. Maybe we can get some suggestions for what we can do with the graveyard. You may notice by now that I have a new map called Village Building System. So that's probably what I'm going to try to do today. Most likely I'm going to need to activate doodads. I've been thinking about how I'm going to go about doing this, and it could be either a very messy system done with all eventing, or I could make it easy on myself and use Yanfly's grid-free doodads. So I'm turning this grid-free doodad pack and the extended doodad pack. We will definitely need this extension because we're going to be using switches to toggle if the player owns this building or if they've set up this building. So we will need this one to add the extra functionality to the grid-free doodads. But since I just grabbed the plugins and not the resources needed for this plugin, it's not going to help me without having any resources. So I need to go back to yanfly.mo and get those resources. I'll put a link in the description to Yanfly's grid-free doodads and the doodad starting pack. Right here, I'm going to save this one, the doodad starting pack. The instructions are below here. So inside of our IMG folder, we're going to create a new folder and call it doodads. And inside here, we'll paste the downloaded file. I'm going to right-click drag using 7-zip and extract here. Okay, I see we have an issue here. I'm actually going to press Ctrl-X, which is going to cut this doodads, and I'm going to paste it inside here. I can get rid of the starting pack. We also need to take the data folder, the doodads.json, so I'm going to cut this doodads.json and put it inside the data, just like that. Now I'm going to do some cleanup in the doodads. I don't need this data folder, so I'm going to delete this. And I don't need this IMG inside the IMG, so I'm going to delete that. It would be much cleaner to extract it inside the game. In case you did it this way, there's a workaround. So the ultimate thing we have to have is inside the IMG folder, we have the doodads folder, which contains folders for each other type of graphic. You can add your own folders in here. As a matter of fact, let's do that. Let's create a folder and we'll call it DG_. and we can add our own art right here inside this doodads folder. So adding doodads is not something you do from the editor. You actually use them inside the game itself, which is kind of crazy. Before we jump into the game and start adding doodads, I want to add a new tile set. To add new tile sets, you need to add the art into your IMG tile sets folder. I'm going to be pasting all the first seed material tile sets that I purchased on Steam. I highly recommend the first seed material tile sets. They're beautiful looking and I really like them. Once you have the tile set art inside your IMG tile sets folder, you need to go into the database and allocate space for them in the JSONs for the tile sets. I'm just going to add a bunch of tile sets here. So I've made some space for the FSM tile sets. These are all the ones that come with the sample projects when you purchase the DLC on Steam. If you copy them from the sample projects, it'll save you a lot of time in putting X's and O's on all the tile sets. So it's pretty simple to do once you have the sample projects and the art off of Steam. For our village building system, we're going to be using the Town of Beginnings outside tile set from the FSM Town art pack. We'll start off with the blank map. Okay, so we've got our village map set up, our blank empty village. I want to check to see if all the collisions are in the right spot and if there's any parts of the tile set I need to edit before I start. Also wanted to see how the timers would operate if I switch to a different map. It seems like they're still working perfectly fine. They will probably pause if I go to the menu, as well as pause if I'm in a battle, the classic battle system anyway. So this is going to be our blank town, and we're going to use the doodads to draw the buildings. So we'll have to make that art inside of Photoshop or something, and then put that artwork inside the doodads folder. Use those doodads with a conditional event that's invisible, like for the doors or something. Like we'll have to strategically place it. Let's go back to the world map. Need to make those player touch as well. Seems to be working fine. Need to test the fish farm event. I'm going to make this tile walk overable as if it's a bridge. That way we can access our fish farm. This needs to be player touch, as well as the other transfer event, player touch as well. I'm creating a control variable here that's this event is going to be changed. It's going to be no trigger. I'm just creating a variable so that in the game I have something to look at. So now I'm going to jump into the game and press F10 and start checking out the doodads. So once you're in game, you press F10 and you are prompted with a menu for the doodads. So we can place doodads. And you see the folder that we created, the DG_. We can import our art right there and it will populate this little list. Okay, let's set up a rudimentary test event with like a plaque or a monument. And this monument is going to be right here at the beginning of the entrance of the map. We can place this with WASD, or we can use the mouse to move. We can press up down to get every pixel if we want to get it just where we want it to be. And we can mess with the layer too. Once we place the doodads, I'll hit escape and I can go into edit doodads. And if you look at this doodad, you can change several things about it. So we might as well do something like that. Let's give this a green color and we will scale it up 200%. Doodads are really cool. I'm just going to make it a normal one. This is the part of the plugin that we're going to be using and why we need the extension to set up the condition that will require the player build the map. So here's where we set our switch conditions. So this doodad, the thing we just placed, will not be here unless village building switch is on. Or we can make it not require anything or specify that it'll only be there if it's off. So I want it to only be there if it's on, and we're going to test this event to see if this works as intended. And if it does, then we know that our village building system can work around this basis. I'm going to right click, which is going to take me back. I have to click on accept settings, and now I can go back by right clicking. Don't forget to save and close. You see how the monument immediately disappeared because that switch that we required is off by default, so it's not going to be there. We can make the artwork for all of our buildings and place them down the game's IMG Doodads DG folder, place them requiring the switch be on, then only build the buildings after the player has turned the switch on, however you want that to happen. So that's going to be a good way to build our system, a good way to set up our village building system. I think that's what we're going to do. Well, let's test this. I don't have a debug plugin in. I'll just make a temporary event. Now we really don't need all of this to turn on a switch. I'm kind of making this as a formality to award this to the player at some point. In fact, I immediately want to change it. That's okay though. I'm going to just turn the switch on at some point in the story, like when the player starts. If we go in here, I want to just test this though. We don't see our village monument and we got our village deed. Say we visit an architect and we buy like a blueprints for a blacksmith shop or something like that. Then he'll give us the blueprints. And then when we use the blueprints, we can have it turn a switch on, and that should have the monument or the blacksmith's thing appear. We should also make this collidable somehow. What we could do is have conditions checking that switch to match the location. Right here, we can have a blank event that requires village building to be on, and if it does, then it'll be same as character. And if you wanted, you can paste it over here too. Got our deed, and we can no longer walk right there. So that's a quick fix. Why is that still showing? Because we have events now. And the common event is saying on certain event, isn't it? This is event 3. This is event 4. Wow, that's going to really throw a wrench in things. The common event is calling our timers. Yeah, our common events are working off the timers, which are still running, but we're showing animations on event numbers. So when we go into another map that has events, obviously there's going to be numbers for those events. The common event is going to place those animations on those events. I'm going to have to find a workaround for that. The balloon icon we may not want to use that if we're going to have a village town, or we can pause all of the timers while we're in town. That makes the most sense. Let's see if we can do something like that. While we're inside town, all of our timers are paused. That way we can still use the gab window and plugin commands for show icon balloon, several other things that we're going to be referencing event numbers. We can pause the timers by turning off all of the switches upon entering the village. That's interesting. Let me try to do something like that. So the only way in the village is through this transfer event. Transfer to village. Oh, but then we're going to run into the problem with, we turn these back on. We may need to allocate 2 switches. This is fun, I like this. We may need to allocate 2 switches for each event, which is not that big of a deal. One to specify whether it's running or not, and another to specify if it's been purchased and activated or not. So let's do that. Easy, okay. When we purchase mine 1, we turn on mine timer 1, right, and that activates it. But we also need another control switch so that we can reference later that mine 1 was purchased. For example, mine 01 purchased. and that will also be turned on. This gives us the ability to turn off the timer with other events, but remember if it was purchased or not, so that we can turn it back on. That way, the problem that I saw us encountering is if I turn everything off when we walk into the village, that's great and all. But when we walk out, we're supposed to turn those things back on, right? Well, how is the game gonna know what you've bought or not? So you don't have to buy anything. You go in the village, you come out of the village, and you own everything. So that's a problem that I see us encountering, but to circumvent that, we add another switch that just turns on the same time as you turn the timer on for the first time. It's to specify if we've purchased this thing or not. Very easy, very cool. I like that. You're gonna come across problems, and sometimes the solutions are very simple, and sometimes they're not. Let's see if this actually works the way I want it to work before I get too excited about it. So we have a fish farm, a regular farm, a quarry, and a mine. That's 4 things, 4 switches to toggle. When we walk into the village, we need to have all of these timers turned off. Not the purchased switches, just the ones that are in the common event or the parallel process. We'll be turning off this one, this one, this one, and this one. Fish timer, quarry timer, farm timer, and mine timer 1 versions. So when we enter in here, before we do the transfer event, we're going to control 4 switches. We're going to turn off the mine timer. Oops. Now on the only exit to the building, the transfer event, we need to do conditional checks to see which ones we turn back on before the transfer event. We will make a conditional branch checking to see if they've purchased mine 1. If they've purchased mine 1, we don't need an else handler, we will turn back on mine timer. We're basically going to copy paste this event for each thing we purchased. If they've purchased farm 1, then turn on the farm 1 timer. If they've purchased the quarry 1, then turn on the quarry timer. Cool. I foresee one issue with this, but I'll find a workaround later. The issue is if we toggle some of our buildings to be shut off, when we go in the village and come back out, they're going to be turned on if we bought them. So we'll have to work around that, but I want to test this before I jump into another issue. Oh, but before I do this, I want to just, instead of waiting around, I'm going to award myself 4,000 gold. That way I can purchase everything and then test to see if it still works when I go in and when I go out. First, I want to go in. I know that this is going to work fine. We will get our item for our village deed. We'll use our village deed, and this is here. Now we have our plaque for our village. We can even have this say something. Immediately, oh, our starting town also, because our starting town timer. So we need to turn that off as well. Control switches. Our starting town timer needs to be off when we transfer in, and also it will always be turned back on without condition when we exit. But we will do a switch. Control switch here, starting town timer, goes back on. Okay, that was the one. Now all we have is our starting town timer making us money. If we walk inside town, it shouldn't trigger, even with the event, so let's test this. We've got our village deed, we use it. Oh, I also wonder if I'm standing in this spot that the building appears in, will that lock up the player? Hold on, let me test something. If I go in here, get our deed, and I stand where there's going to be, thing is here, and it's going to be like, player can't walk on it. If I use it and put myself there, okay, I don't get stuck there. But if I'm unable to move, like I obviously wouldn't be able to walk left. So I have to be mindful of where I place things, and maybe I should put like a fence to block the player out of where a house would go. And it's okay, so that's just a building design which I can fix, that I can work around potential problems I may encounter in the future before they're even here. Okay, so we've got no timers kicking off. If we walk back out, does everything shut off or does everything turn on? I don't think so. I'll wait a few seconds first. Just our starting town timer, which should be on from the beginning to make us money. But none of the other stuff is. Great. So let's go over to the mine and purchase the mine. Yep, we want it. Let's purchase the farm. Let's purchase the quarry. I can get rid of the move event on the farm, which I will do. Let's purchase the docks. Now we should be producing something out of here every 30 seconds. I think it's still set to 3. It's obviously still set to 3, which is fine. We'll switch that back. But actually, that's good. It lets us debug to see if it shuts off when we go into town. Does it turn off when we go into town? We shouldn't be getting spammed. Hey, it turned off. Great. So all of our world harvesting things turns off, but our meat timer hasn't. So we're still like losing food while we're in the village. I don't know if I want to turn that off, actually. I might want to keep that on, or maybe let the player come into the village if they need to AFK for a while. But at any point, the player can hit escape and it pauses the game. It's going to stop all of the timers. So escape will pause the game if they need to AFK. It's not going to be a big deal. So I'm going to leave the meat timer consuming food while we're in the village walking around, because it's 10 minutes. It's very lenient. We walk back out. We've purchased everything. Does everything still work? It seems like it is. I got ore. We're getting stone. We're getting money. These things only trigger every 3 minutes. So the docks and the farm should be a while. And this should only be 30 seconds, but like I said, it's debug mode, so it's doing it every 3 seconds. And this over here, I changed the mine from 30 to 20 seconds. So the mine is going to produce something every 20 seconds, but require pickaxe as well. When we run out of pickaxes, let me see. I kind of want to include the number of pickaxes the player has from this event. So I'm going to do a few changes, fix the bugs, but apparently our system's working fine. When we walk in town, all of our timers will stop. This will let us set up our village building system. We're going to use Ganfly's Doodad plugin to set up how we put the buildings down. We'll make the art in Photoshop or Sprite, probably Photoshop, and just add it to the IMG Doodads DG folder and add them as doodads with switch conditions. And we can create events as well. Let's look at how we would do the events for like transfer events or whatever. This is great. Right here, we can have this say, a new mayor has set up the rights to build a town here. Name your town. Name your town. Okay, so what this is going to do is let us name the town. We will, this is kind of cool, we will show name input processing. We'll create a second character, a second actor with a maximum of 16 characters, and do a name processing. What we'll do over here is, for actor 2, we'll leave it blank, but we will start his name as default town, and let the player change that. And we can reference the actors in the variables, so we can call upon the name of the town depending on whatever the player named it. It will be input in dialogues if we want using the message core. But this is why I'm going to do it like this. So once we've let the player name the town, we'll do a self switch here. Control self switch A and a new page, and then it will say this is town. Or this town is named actor 2. I think that's how it works, actor 2. I'm very curious to see if this is going to work or not. Let's try it. Go in here. Oh, I need to set the second page to be same as characters. It doesn't have an image, so it defaults to below. And that's not the right message code, so I've got to find that. Okay, it's an N. We use N for the name of the actor. So we're going to use actor 2 as the name of our village. So we'll slash N 2. And at first we're going to rename it. And this is going to set, we forgot to do self switch A on. This is going to be event 3 for count. So it defaulted to 2. I need to fix a couple bugs before I forget. I want to get rid of the move event here. I need to change the timer on the quarry from 3 seconds to 30 seconds. I wanted to show the number of pickaxes the player has once they've purchased it and they access the mine again. When you walk up to it, it asks, would you like to stop or start the mines? You may have run out of resources if you're trying to access this because it stopped automatically. I want to also show you have this many pickaxes remaining. In order to make that work, it's very easy. So we have to allocate a variable to store the number of pickaxes the player has. That's easy. We will control a variable. We will say pickaxe count. And we will set it to the game data for item pickaxe. So however many pickaxes we have, we set that into the variable pickaxe count. Then we look at the number for the pickaxe count, which is 11. Then we reference variable 11. We say you have variable number 11 of the item icon in the first inventory of the JSON for items remaining. So you have however many pickaxes remaining. Now I need to test this as well, so I'm just going to put myself right here and see what it looks like. Okay, we purchased the mine, blah-de-da, and now we look at it. Would you like to start or stop the mines? You may have run out of resources. You have 10 pickaxe remaining. We can add an S at the end. You have 10 pickaxe, singular, remaining. Fine. If we wanted to add an S, would it mess up the code? I'm wondering. I don't think so. I think it would work fine. Let's try to do that. Yeah, I think that would actually look great. It's not gonna mess it up. What was I thinking? You have 10 pickaxes remaining. I mean, it'll still say pickaxes when you have 1 pickaxes remaining, but that's more likely the case that you're gonna have more than 1, so we'll go with that. We could also do a conditional check to see if you have if you have more than 1. Okay, alright, fine. I thought about an issue. We'll do it. It's easy. Oh my god. Conditional branch. If the variable pickaxe count is just greater than 1, we need to put this on page 2. Okay, on page 2, at the beginning of page 2, actually want to do the control variables at the top. So we do control variables, we put the number of pickaxes into a variable, we check to see if the player has more than one, and if they have more than one, then we put the would you like to start da-da-da-da right there, and otherwise we copy paste this, we get rid of the S, like that. That's how you do that. If they have more than one, then it's going to say you have this many pickaxes remaining with an S, otherwise it's going to say you have one pickaxe, singular, remaining, and then it's going to show choices. So I want to test this, it should work, but I want to test it anyway, but we need something to remove the number of pickaxes. I'm going to create an event right here that looks like a door, because that's what it's supposed to look like, and what it's going to do is change items, decrease pickaxes. I just want to take this, put that in here. We're going to take away a pickaxe first, and then put that number in a variable, and then let the player know how many they have remaining. This is going to be so that we can check the code. I could also, yeah, whatever, this is fine. A debug plugin would be great. I should just put Yanfly's debug plugin in. Okay, at the beginning, we're going to construct this. Would you like to start or stop the mines? You have 10 pickaxes remaining. Let's stop the mines so it doesn't consume them. But we have 9, we have 8, we have 7, we have 6, we have 5, we have 4, we have 3. This is going to say S anyway, but we're not checking that because we're going to delete this. Now we have 1 pickaxe remaining. We're going to look right here. Would you like to start or stop the mines? You may have run out of pixels. You have 1 pickaxe remaining. So it works. We'll start the mine, it'll consume it, and then it'll stop. So now we added a little quality of life change to the mines. All right, what was I doing? I was doing something else. It was probably more important than that. Oh yeah, I wanted to test if the naming system worked. Let's test to see if our naming the town using an actor's will work. We can also just use a variable, it doesn't have to be an actor, but I thought this was kind of funny and convenient and an interesting way to do it. So we'll do village deed. Actually, this is going to be turned on from the beginning. A new mayor has set up the rights to build a town here. Name your town, and then you have to name it. Oh, I'm going to put in a plugin so that we can type instead of having to use this thing. So I'm going to look for that. Let me know in the comments below if you have a suggestion for the best one. We're going to call this Drift Town. Okay. Now we look at it. Does it tell us this is Drift Town? This town is named Drift Town. Yay! That's going to do it for this episode, guys. We made a lot of progress, and this was a kind of fun episode. I had fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button and like the smash button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, or if you've been around watching my videos for long. Why are you not subbed to me? Please sub to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy this content and would like to see more of it, please consider supporting me on Patreon. That is patreon.com/driftwoodgaming. That would be very appreciated. If you would like to come hang out on the Discord, there is a link in the description below. Come hang out and chat with us. We'd love to see you there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this series so far. More episodes to come. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!